in my circle? Who the one who be the snakes? Who gon' fold up under pressure? Who gon' understand the stakes? Who gon' wait to get their food to try to take from off my plate? Who the love? Who gon' understand I'm hurt? Who gon' love me unconditionally and try and make it work? Who gon' party once I'm gone and shed a tear once I'm in dirt? I ain't asking for too much, I'm trying to understand my worth.
Welcome to the next episode of Give Me My Crown podcast.
Give Me My Crown podcast.
And we back at y'all with another episode. And as most of y'all know, obviously, big time of the year because we got an election coming up.
Yes.
This podcast, we're going to kind of go through policies and procedures that each, I guess, candidate has put out and kind of just give you our take on what we think about each policy. And we're going to keep this mainly to strictly policies, not whether we're going one way or the other, just kind of sticking to a lot of the main policies that that each one are putting out and just tell you kind of what we think about each policy and just kind of give our take on each policy.
Yep.
So, like we said, as y'all know, big year. This is a big year we got elections for everything, governors, state officials, and also presidential election. So obviously the presidential election is the big one. And you got Kamala Harris, Donald Trump. Obviously Harris is a Democrat, Trump is a Republican, and then you got a few others that are running with the independent parties. So kind of let's start off obviously with the two main ones, kind of a few talking points that each have put out over the past couple months or so since they've been campaigning, and kind of let's go into some of the policies that each one has put out and kind of what we feel about each policy and how we think it could affect us.
So who you want to start with?
It don't matter. We can go back and forth.
Okay. So, we can start with Donald Trump. He's the more, I won't say polarizing, but the one people talk about the most. Do you want to start with the policies that he's proposing now, or do you want to go with past policies he tried to do?
Let's just kind of throw everything in there.
Okay. So I'll start with so we'll go there. A lot of people say he's a racist, right? So the Platinum Plan, if you have not looked it up, look up the Platinum Plan. Dive into the Platinum Plan. The Platinum Plan was put out that would advance African Americans. That's the very skinny of it. I can actually pull it up if you want me to go through some of the things they would do. You want me to do that?
Yeah, that's cool. But yeah, I have heard a lot of good things about the Platinum Plan. As you said, it was it's a long plan, so it's a lot to go through with that plan. But like you said, it does benefit. It does highly benefit African Americans.
Yeah, it does. Let me pull it up.
And while you're pulling that up, another issue with him that he's brought up is tariffs. Essentially raising the tariffs on these foreign countries, and even a higher tariff for countries like China. Now, there's two sides to this policy. The side that he's thinking, which I think would be good, is it would essentially force these manufacturers to bring jobs back to America because they're not going to want to pay. They're not going to pay these higher prices because of these tariffs that they're imposing on China, even though the products are being made cheaper over there now with these tariffs. Are they really going to be cheaper by going over there? Another, on the flip side of that, I think the problem is if you do that, the prices are going to significantly raise on these on these products because you're going to have the consumer eating the cost rather than the producer.
Not only that, I would say another negative of it would be kind of like we saw before with Apple. So like Apple is banned pretty much in China.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So it becomes a different type of war.
Yeah.
So if we do tariffs, I'm like, okay, we're going to block companies from the U.S. actually sending to us. So yeah.
Yeah.
So going to the platinum plan, some of the major key things were provide more opportunity, security, and prosperity and fairness for African Americans. I'm going to go through this really quick. 3 million new jobs for Black communities, creating 500,000 new Black-owned businesses, increase access to capital in Black communities by amount of $500 billion, which is huge because that's like
Yeah.
a influx of $500 billion in the Black communities. Safe urban neighborhoods with highest policing standards. So basically, educating police even more about being in Black communities and how to deal with African Americans. Um, Access to better education and job training opportunities. I think that's a big one because as we can see now in some places in America, especially in the inner cities, they don't even have real teachers. You know, it got long term substitute teachers.
Yeah, you got long-term substitutes. You're looking at some schools do what they call what are they called? I forgot what they're called, but they're essentially long-term substitutes. They're technically not qualified teachers, but they're still teaching as if they are qualified.
Correct.
So
Yeah, immigration policy that protects American jobs, advanced home ownership opportunities, and enhance financial literacy in the Black community, which, as we see, is huge. It's also a way for people to advance by teaching it to the community as well. So, like,
yeah.
to me, all of it is about ownership in the Black community versus they're being given a handout. It's like, okay, we're going to help you advance.
Yes.
So it's no more.
Yeah, which I think is huge because like you said, instead of taking a handout, it actually teaches the Black community that sense of ownership, and even with ownership, that's how you create generational wealth through ownership.
And then some of the other things was one of the major call outs for this was safety and justice. So also call reform to the justice system when it comes toward the African American community. Like when history, like I was a huge proponent of past politicians, and so I started doing my own research of like the '94 crime bill, like stuff like that. It would never be allowed to happen again. So yeah.
Yeah, so I think that in itself is huge.
If you want to go through, I know this is one that you know a lot about, the taxes or the real estate part of different, because both of them propose home ownership and the difference between the two, and when it comes to like the home ownership part, as far as like the tax policies and stuff like that, we want to dive into that.
Kamala has proposed, I want to say I think it's $25,000 towards down payment of a new home.
Correct.
Now, $25,000 is a good amount of money for a down payment. The surface of that plan looks good because obviously you're giving people money for down payment. Flip side of that, I do think it will kill the housing market. And when I say that, I think it will essentially raise prices because what you're doing. Because obviously we don't know what the qualifications for that amount is, but you're essentially giving an influx of buyers a lot more capital. So you're influxing the market with buyers. When you do that, you got 5 and 6 buyers going after one house. Problem with that is when they're going to start overpaying for these houses because you're going to start having these bidding wars, just as we did in, 2021 when interest rates dropped tremendously. You have people overpaying for houses like crazy. So I think we could see that again where you have a big influx. When you have a big influx of buyers, you have people overpaying for houses because they're getting in these bidding wars and they're trying to win the house. So I think could essentially hurt the housing market because, as we see, the housing market is still on the up and up. It's only for so long. Nothing can continue to go up and up forever. So the problem is when are we going to see a crash? When are we going to see a dip? When are we going to see the bubble burst? Because it could be next year. It could be in 10, 15 years. Nobody knows. But obviously we got these different measures in place to predict it. But one thing we do know is that eventually it will happen. Just
Okay.
like that's just like, and essentially the same thing as the stock market. Stock market can go up and up and up, but eventually it's gonna have to fall. Um, Now, when it falls, it could fall and raise back up, and it could balance itself out over the long term. But we know that nothing can continue to climb at a certain rate continuously.
Yeah.
Um, Now, while we're speaking on the stock market, if we talk about another plan Kamala has proposed is taxes on unrealized gains. That in itself is huge because obviously it's starting the way it's proposed is 100 million plus. But as we know with anything else, it's going to start to trickle down. So it may start with 100 million plus. Who knows how long it takes to get to 100,000 plus? And essentially, what that's saying is you're paying taxes on money you don't have yet, on essentially on potential money. So say you have stock in a company. Say you have stock in Apple, and you have $200 million of stock in Apple. You're then going to be subject to that tax. What that tax does is you're going to pay taxes on the 200 million you have in assets in Apple, but you're then going to but you don't. But like I said, the reason I say it's potential money because you don't have that money. You own that in stock. You have not sold that yet. So essentially, stock doesn't become money until you sell it. So while it's stock, it still counts as your asset. Yes, it's still an asset. And if you look at it, that's how a lot of these millionaires and billionaires are obtaining their wealth because they have their money in stocks or they have their money in other investments. So when you start taxing people on money they don't have, on potential money, then you create a problem because now people are essentially gonna say, if I'm paying tax on money I don't have, what if I lose this money? Then I've already paid the tax on the money I never earned. So year after year, they're paying tax on money that they don't have and money that they don't know, and that there's no guarantee they're going to get. Because just because it's 200 million in as Apple today, if Apple completely if you pay them those taxes, then Apple completely dips. You've already paid taxes on it, but then you've lost that money. Already, you've lost that money too. So I think what's going to go ahead.
That's one of the questions that people have been asking. If you can get the unrealized tax gains, can you get the tax losses as well?
Exactly,
Yeah.
because that would only make sense.
Yeah.
Because if I had to pay money on, like I said, if I had to pay taxes on money I don't have yet, why is it that I can't pay money on taxes that I haven't lost, or money that I haven't lost yet, or get tax credits or whatever? So I think if that is implemented, I think it could potentially cause a crash because you're going to have a lot of people, I think, selling a lot of stocks because there's the way you look at it is if I'm paying if I'm paying taxes on money I don't have, why not go ahead and get the money for sure and just pay that one time capital gain tax? Because I think another something else that hasn't been made clear yet is this going to be a tax every year? So if I pay taxes on my portfolio this year, next year am I going to have to pay taxes on that same portfolio year after year after year?
And I would say it would go in her defense though, like as far as like we don't know what the percentage of tax will be. We don't know how often you will have to pay the tax. So like I think we all just hear unrealized tax gains and we jump on it. And I will say we've heard this before this election. We talked about this 3 years ago. Like this is something that's been kicked out for years. So I won't just put this on her. I'll say that this is one of the things that until we hear the whole plan laid out, this is up in the air. And you have people who say it's $100 million. That's not. I don't have to worry about that yet. But as you said, it's America. Whether it's Democrats or Republicans, they all do the trickle down effect different ways. And another big thing we can talk about inflation. So I know, like as far as neither one. Well, Trump's is super clear. He's going to open up the pipeline. That's like open the pipeline. I mean, you want to bring inflation down? Open up the oil line. Let the oil flow. I think I will say, like, she's mentioned things like raising minimum wage to offset inflation. Um, what else? Increasing the homes so people can buy homes. Um, some people say that that doesn't help. Some people say it will. She wants to force the price of food to go down, like force these companies to lower the price of food. So as far as inflation, I know that's something both of them are high
Yeah.
on. Yeah.
And it's been talked about for many years about raising minimum wage. Um, and so, because obviously minimum wage was never meant to be a livable wage.
Right.
Minimum wage is or I'm not going to say livable. Minimum wage never meant to be a permanent thing. So if
Correct.
you come in a job at minimum wage, it should be a certain amount of time before you start seeing those increases. Now, is minimum wage? I do think minimum wage should adjust with inflation.
Yes.
But the problem you have is once you start once you start forcing these companies to pay, if you say, hey, minimum wage is now $25 an hour, a lot of these companies, no, we're not paying that. We're gonna pay AI or a robot this one time fee, and then we're gonna go from there. And
Yes.
then we're gonna on the front end, yeah, we're gonna spend a lot of money, we're gonna lose money on the front end. But in the long run, we have less error, and we also don't have monthly recurring charges for those employees. We don't have to worry about those employees calling out. We don't have to worry about how long we can stay open. This robot is continuous
Exactly.
and it's
Robots don't
teaching
get sick.
itself. Exactly, and they're
Yeah.
teaching itself, so they're
Yep.
constantly going. Because if you look at, like, for instance, a simple one, Bojangles no longer, or at least the Bojangles here in Charlotte, they no longer take your order when you pull up to the drive-thru. When you speak to the microphone, you're talking to AI, and the way it is as accurate, and like it's ridiculous how accurate it is. Because I went the other day, got a sausage and egg biscuit, no cheese, and that's exactly what I said: sausage egg biscuit, no cheese, water, no ice, and it repeated it back to me, and of course drive around to the window, and there it is. So I think like obviously when you first talk about AI, there's some kinks to work out, but even just that, just how accurate it is whenever you order, is showing the way that we're currently going.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to go take us to the next topic.
Go ahead.
One of the biggest ones in America, abortion, and we're just sticking strictly to policies and how people
Yeah.
feel. Of course, Roe versus Wade was overturned.
Yeah.
Harris wants to make abortion rights it's the biggest part of her campaign.
Yeah.
She wants to change the legislation back, bring it back. Make female bodies is their bodies, their right. They can get an abortion when they feel like it.
Yeah.
Like some people say it, and she said she never said it. You can get an abortion in 9 months. She does not agree with that. So Trump has been villainized a little bit for his stance on abortion, because he was part of overturning Roe versus Wade. So
Yeah. And his stance is mainly because I also with his stance, I think a lot of people get it confused because I don't think his stance is necessarily completely getting rid of abortion. I think his stance is not making it a federal law, leaving it up to the states.
correct.
Obviously, because every state is different. So I think it's leaving it up to the states to determine.
Yep.
What's another big thing they're talking about now?
Immigration. It's like you can't cut the TV on without immigration. Trump construction of the wall in Mexico. He wants to bring that back. He wants to make it tougher for illegal immigrants coming into the country, whether it's through the border, any way possible. He wants to increase the control of America for America, pretty much.
Yeah.
With Harris, it kind of goes back and forth a little bit. They've been proponents of policing the border a little bit more, and they've also been like, we don't need to police the border. So that one kind of goes both ways. The border crisis is looked at a little bit more firm from Trump and a little bit more it depends on where we at with the Harris administration.
Yeah, because also you got a lot of things that have happened over the past couple of years when it comes to immigration, immigrants, things like that a lot of people don't agree with. So I think, and I think a lot of people are looking at specifically Harris, like, okay, hey, you've been in office, or you've been with this office for the past 4 years. Like, what are you going to do that is different from what has already been done?
Yep.
So I think that's a huge thing, because, like you said, immigration is huge. Because if you look at when you talk about immigration, obviously you got to bring in jobs, you got to bring in housing, things like that, because you got especially because just with everything, there's a wrong way to do stuff and there's a right way to do stuff. So I think if it's done the right way, I think everything is good. When it's done the wrong way, that's when people start questioning, like, okay, like, why is this being done like this?
Yep.
Why is this happening? Why is that happening? And it kind of, like I said, it kind of feeds into a lot of other things also.
Yep. And climate control.
Yeah.
So Harris is a proponent of renewable energy, electric cars, giving people tax credits on having electric vehicles, and a rebate program if you have electric vehicles.
Yep.
She has some opposition to fracking. She didn't say she would do away with it, but she did say, we have to control fracking.
Yeah.
Now, Trump, on the other hand, he rolled back the environmental procedures. He is a proponent of drilling for oil in the pipeline. He did have an attack on electric vehicles, which is ironic because him and Elon Musk get the deal together for Starlink for Asheville.
Yeah.
And he is for drilling in the Arctic, and that is a huge no to the world. So when it comes to climate, yeah.
So kind of on a personal level now, how do you feel just about let's talk about since we're on this topic about electric vehicles.
Yeah.
How do you feel how do you personally feel about electric vehicles?
Mine would go a little bit broader for me, right? So the AI movement, right? I love technology. I think technology is great, but it's hitting that scary phase for me.
Yes.
We talk about self-learning. Anything that can self-learn can self-teach itself to bypass something. So
I think the same thing.
If you put a kill switch in place, if I'm learning every day, right?
Yep.
I'm going to learn to bypass my kill switch. And that's what scares me. Like, I've seen self-learning AI. I've seen AI put in place and run for months, and then when you turn it on, it's like it's perfect.
Yep.
I think about all the years that Alexa, Google, Siri, they have been using people learning your voice, learning everything, right?
Yep.
Like, we don't think about it. That's been self-learning since the day it got cut on.
Yeah, because even you look at things like Alexa. My daughter even called this out. You look at things like Alexa. Alexa recognizes voices too. So if you say something to my Alexa and it's not me, sometimes she won't respond. If I have it if I have it on a certain mode, it only responds to my voice.
Yeah.
And then my daughter pointed something out. When I walk by Alexa, it says "Good morning, Antonio." When anybody else walks by, it doesn't say anything.
But how would it know to say "Good morning, Antonio" if it is not doing more than just listening?
Exactly.
So
exactly. Because you got
AI scary.
Yeah, it definitely is. Because you also got the camera on there, and I usually keep the camera closed, things like that. But yeah, AI is definitely scary because when it comes to vehicles, obviously there are certain things that can be done with any vehicle, but I think when it comes to electric vehicles, I think somebody has too much power.
That's
because
true.
because if it's electrical, which means it's ran by a computer, which means there is a main hub somewhere that can control this computer.
Yes.
And obviously, most cars now have computers in them, but they're combustion engines, so they're run off gas, oil, your main stuff. When you have an electric vehicle, I feel like it can be cut off at any time.
It can, and that's been proven.
Yes.
Elon Musk did that when somebody put a negative post about
Yes.
Tesla. He shut
Yeah.
that Tesla off.
Yes.
Also, a lot of people don't know this when it comes to the chargeable stations. If I own the rights to the chargeable station, which one man does, I can shut the whole grid down if I wanted to.
Yeah.
Elon
So
Musk owns the rights to the charging station.
So if you have that issue, it's like, so I say, for instance, we have like when they shut everything down during COVID. If something like that were to happen, they say, hey, don't leave your houses,
Yeah.
whatever. If they want to, if they say don't leave your houses and everybody has electric vehicles, and somehow either, like you said, either the grid is shut down or say they're able to somehow say everybody has a let's just use Tesla because obviously that's the
Yeah.
main one. They have is able to calculate your route to work. All right, it takes you 20 miles to get to work. You have 40 miles on this vehicle. So it drops it, say it drops it at 40 miles. Say it takes 20 to get here from here to work. So then you have 20 miles to get there. At 20 miles, it automatically kills itself. On the way back, same thing. So I feel because like you said, if AI is constantly self-teaching itself, I feel like it can it teaches more than what we teach it to learn.
Correct.
So stuff like that, I think that's where it kind of gets scary when you're saying that somebody has essentially complete control over where I go, how I'm charging my car, how far I can drive, stuff like that. Because like we said, I think I 100% believe it can get to that point where they say nobody's driving their car. We're shutting off all electric cars.
Yeah.
Because
go ahead.
Now I was gonna say because like in the military, there's devices that when you activate it, it essentially kills radio frequencies within a certain mile of that device.
Yep.
So if you can do something like that, there's obviously how long will it take if it's not already something out there that can kill any like vehicles, like any kind of power within a certain radius
Right.
of that device.
Another big topic. I'm looking at the screen now. Something that people are very huge on is gun control.
Yes.
We all know it's part of the Constitution. Where Harris is about preventing gun violence, and she pledges, that basically she wants to tighten gun ownership. And what does that mean? Like expand background checks or banning assault weapons like the AR-15. That's one of the things she proposed, like banning AR-15s. Why does a normal person get AR-15? Where Trump is like huge Second Amendment. Like, you have the right to bear arms. If you want a meeting guns, go get a meeting guns.
Yeah.
So,
because I think that one can go. Because as we see, that goes. You see a lot of that start to resurface once we have these shootings, these quote unquote mass shootings, because obviously they changed because when you hear mass shooting, it's not what it used to be because the definition has changed. So because a mass shooting is 4 or more people shot.
Yeah.
Is that a mass shooting? Yeah, I guess it depends because a lot of times, like you said, when you hear mass shooting, you think, "Oh my gosh, it's crazy," but it could be like if it's contained or somewhere like at a party, something like that, or if there's something happens in a house or whatever. I think most time people hear mass shooting, they think, oh, a school is getting shot up, a mall is getting shot up, a hospital, something on a larger scale.
Correct.
So, and even when you look at a lot of that stuff, a lot of these mass shootings, I think because that's when they start bringing up gun control.
Yeah.
But then when you look at them, like, is it gun control or is it something else?
We keeping it strictly policies and procedures.
Yeah.
So I just say you said is it something else? So we're keeping it strictly policies and procedures. I had a thought. So that's why I said that. keep myself on.
It was a rhetorical question.
Yeah, it kept myself on task. So marijuana. So this is one that I feel like when I listen to both of them speak about it, they kind of agree on. Like Trump was a huge proponent against marijuana for a long time, but he's starting to soften his stance. He's been saying it's time to end the needless arrests and incarcerations. Kamala has like she wants to decriminalize it nationwide for recreational use. So I'll say, especially for people who have like chronic illnesses, like I personally don't use it, but people say it does help them a lot with the pain level. So
Yeah.
I can see, this one. I think both of them are kind of on the same page.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to marijuana, I think the only issue with them with legalizing is just the chemicals that goes into some of them versus
It's true.
essentially natural.
Yeah.
So I think that I do think there may be something if they do legalize, I think it may be something put in place there from either side.
Got you. So if it's legalized, I think I'm gonna use a street term. It'll be Reggie. It'll be regular marijuana, not all the other stuff. It'll be regular marijuana.
Yeah.
People be on the exotic. It's be regular marijuana. But those are the major key points. I think some of the other ones we can talk about is cryptocurrency, because a lot of people don't understand. America lives in a bubble.
Yes.
Across the globe, a lot of countries are going away from paper dollar. They're going away from other things like Japan in 2025 is going to a digital cryptocurrency as their main currency.
Yep.
A lot of countries are starting to do the same thing. China, they're doing a digital yen, so it's like we are one of the countries that's the furthest behind with that. So it will become a hot topic where people wonder, like, okay, what's the cryptocurrency policy?
Yeah, because even speaking about cryptocurrency, I think it's only so long before our dollar is worthless to other nations.
And we see that, right? So, like, one thing I think neither one of them has talked about is how do we plan to deal with the BRICS?
Yes.
A lot of people aren't educated with what's going on in the world, where countries are saying we don't want the U.S. dollar anymore.
Yep.
So I've said this before. China's the biggest hustler in the room. China and Russia got together and are convincing all these other nations, like, hey, you don't need the U.S. dollar to survive. We don't agree with their policies that they're trying to push on us. So let's form our own world currency. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think another big issue is obviously a lot of foreign policies. Like when you look at the wars that's going on,
Yeah.
You obviously got Israel, Palestine, you got Ukraine and Russia, you got Iran
in the world
jumping in.
Iran versus the world.
Jumping into Israel, then obviously you got North Korea now. What was it, a couple weeks ago? Kind of starting to show their face to South Korea. Obviously, South Korea is an ally of us.
Yeah.
So you got North Korea kind of showing their face in there. Then apparently you have some. What was it? North Korea went into, was it Russia? I believe.
They're getting trained by Russia, something like that.
Yes, I think they sent. I think there was a report that they sent like 1,000 or 1,500 troops to. I want to say Russia. I think it was Russia.
It was,
but then there was another report that came out saying it was more like 10,000.
Okay.
So I don't think nobody really knows, but I think that's going to be huge because obviously if the U.S. gets involved, then at that point with all, because if the U.S. if you look at it from our standpoint, if the U.S. gets involved, then you're going to have China, you're going to have Russia, Iran, Israel. You're going to have NATO jumping. So it's essentially return to World War III. If it depends on how far it goes.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be a huge topic too, and that's going to be something honestly, that's going to be something that's going to have to be addressed starting day one of the new presidency.
And I agree. I think that's why it's hard for me, and this is where I guess the feelings and we get off procedures and policies. It's hard for me when we start to get into a pissing match sometimes instead of talking to procedures and policies, because
Yes.
these are things that matter to the country versus how I personally feel about you as a person. Is
Yes.
how you will protect us as a country.
Correct.
I think
Yes.
sometimes people when it comes to voting or when it comes, we get our feelings involved too much. And we should base it off the policies and procedures.
Yeah, because like you said, once you get feelings involved, it can sway your decision one way or another.
Correct.
Because either you're voting for somebody for some reason or you're voting against somebody.
Yeah.
Because you got some people who vote specifically. You got people who vote specifically for a party. You got people who vote specifically for a person, but then you got people who vote against a person.
Yes, that's true.
And there's a difference between voting for a person and voting against a person. So I think those, and then I think we'll see a lot of that this year, one way or another.
And I also say, even though the person is the president, they only have so much power in the U.S.
Correct. Yes.
Congress wields a lot of power.
Yes.
A lot.
Yes. Another thing I would like to see from or for them push is obviously stuff for veterans. I do think that's huge. We obviously have a huge veteran population in the United States. You got thousands, if not millions, of veterans who are homeless.
That's true.
You got veterans who are facing issues such as PTSD or other medical issues that they face, and then they're coming back here, and it's almost like they're coming to a country that doesn't recognize it, or either is not. Even if it is recognized, the knowledge is not out there, because a lot of people don't know about all these different programs that as a veteran you can get, things like that. And I think one good thing that was passed during the current presidency was the PACT Act, and I think that was huge for veterans as far as when it comes to disability and things like that. I think that was a huge one, and it's like no matter what side of the what side you're on, whether you're Democrat, Republican, or Independent, the PACT Act essentially it helps whoever. It helps everybody.
Okay.
And I think that was huge, because it helped a lot of people as far as when it comes to disability, and especially the things you dealt with while you're overseas. Now you're coming back and having these issues over here.
Okay. Yeah. I think we went through a lot of policies and procedures, and and got the election coming up soon, so I can go out and vote. And if you don't vote, hey, just be willing to live whatever you get.
Yeah, because obviously, what was early voting ended yesterday. So early voting was the past 13, 14 days.
Yep.
Ended yesterday. So definitely think the polls will be packed probably all day on Tuesday, wherever you go, because especially in these battleground states.
Yeah.
You got a lot of states that are going to be battleground states, so you're going to have a lot. Then you even got last minute campaigning going on from both sides, from even people who are not running this year, whether it's past presidents, past vice presidents, whatever. You got a lot of people coming in now that are doing all these campaigns, trying to get the last minute word out.
Yeah. Yep.
For Tuesday. So definitely think everybody should be informed. Go look at the policies, go look at the procedures, and like we said, know who you when you're voting for somebody, know who you're voting for, know what each policy is.
Yep.
And like we said, there's a lot of policies we don't have a lot of knowledge on.
Correct.
We just see the surface of it, and we don't know the underlying factors of that policy. It could be better than what we anticipate. It could be 10 times worse than what we anticipate. We don't know.
And I will say, because people throw out certain policies, like we're talking about policies and procedure, I've heard Project 2025 thrown out more than ever, right?
Yes.
Don't just hear it and say it's bad. It
Yes,
could be bad,
correct.
but if you haven't read it,
Correct.
like I talk to a lot of people. I'm like, have you seen the Platinum Plan? People never saw it. They just never talked about it. So the same thing with Project 2025. It could be the worst plan ever, but just do your own research. You know, I think a lot of times that's the part that we lack. We don't do the research to read it. And I use my brother all the time. My brother will sit there, and no matter how long a bill that passed is, he will read it. I'm like, man, why are you wasting time? He's like, you gotta be informed. You gotta know what's in the, like you said, the underline, the bottom of this bill. They're not telling you. So yeah,
that's true because if you look at some of those bills are hundreds of pages.
exactly, they are.
And you'll read that one small line in there that could change everything, but they're just going to give you the topic of it.
Exactly.
They'll give you a synopsis.
There may be something in that bill that can really help you. They're not going to really tell you about it.
Yes.
You know, so yeah.
Yeah. Because that's even the same thing when you go to. It's just like small print. When you read something, once you read the small print on the bottom, it's going to be something that's really bad for you or something that's really good.
Yep.
So, and it's just like a lot of these commercials when you see these medicine commercials at the end, they talk really, really fast about how you might die taking this medicine. So it's kind of the same thing as that. Obviously, they're throwing it in there because they have to, but your mind is not focused on that because they're putting it either very, very small print or they're putting it towards the end when you're no longer paying attention.
Correct.
But I think we gave a lot of stuff. It'll be interesting to see what happens Tuesday. Definitely, we'll revisit this topic.
Yeah.
After the election, and once we hear more about whoever wins, once we hear more about the policies they plan to implement, and kind of a deeper dive into each policy and how it will affect us or help us, things like that.
Okay.
But I think we gave a lot of information. And as we always say before we get off every podcast, this is more than a podcast. We handing out crowns.
Hand them out.
Who the lover, who the hate? Who the realest in my circle? Who the one who be the snakes? Who gon' fold up under pressure? Who gon' understand the stakes? Who gon' wait to get they food to try to take from off my plate? Who the love? Who gon' understand I'm hurt? Who gon' love me unconditionally and try and make it work? Who gon' party once I'm gone and shed a tear once I'm in dirt? I ain't asking for too much, I'm trying to understand my